Picture this, deep within the labyrinthine corridors of the Vatican's secret archives, locked away in climate-controlled vaults, lie documents so controversial, so potentially explosive that some believe they could rewrite history as we know it. From the trial records of the mysterious Knights Templar to evidence of communication with otherworldly beings, these papers have fueled speculation for centuries. In part one of our exploration, we trace the turbulent history of the archives themselves, how they survived persecution, exile, and even Napoleon's conquest. In part two, we descend further into the shadowed vaults of the Vatican archives, daring to unearth the most incendiary and closely guarded secrets hidden within this forbidden repository. Are these merely historical curiosities, or could they hold secrets that challenge our understanding of reality itself? Welcome to Mysteries Decoders, where we uncover the secrets the world doesn't want you to know. In this special multi-part episode, we continue our journey into one of history's most enigmatic institutions. Let's decode. The year was 1307 AD. Before dawn on Friday, October 13th, a date that would later become synonymous with misfortune, King Philip IV of France ordered the simultaneous arrest of Knights Templar throughout his kingdom. These warrior monks, once the wealthiest and most powerful military order in Christendom, stood accused of heresy, blasphemy, and unholy practices. The Vatican archives hold the Chinon parchment, a document that remained hidden until 2001, which reveals that Pope Clement V secretly absolved the Templar leaders of heresy charges. But why keep this absolution secret while allowing the French king to persecute the members of the Templar Knights Order, including burning Templar Grand Master Jacques de Molay at the stake? Was this merely political expediency, or was there something more sinister at play? Some historians suggest that the Templars possessed knowledge or artifacts that threatened established power structures. During their occupation of Jerusalem's Temple Mount, did they uncover ancient secrets buried beneath Solomon's temple? The archives contain Templar interrogation transcripts describing bizarre initiation rituals and the alleged veneration of a mysterious bearded head later mythologized as Baphomet. Were these confessions merely extracted under torture, or glimpses of esoteric practices the Church deemed too dangerous for public knowledge? The abrupt dissolution of such a powerful order, followed by centuries of careful document preservation, raises profound questions. What secrets might still lie hidden within the full Templar records? And why has the Vatican been so selective about which documents it releases to the public? In 1527 AD, King Henry VIII of England faced a dynastic crisis. After 18 years of marriage to Catherine of Aragon, he had no male heir. Convinced this was divine punishment for marrying his brother's widow, Henry petitioned Pope Clement VII for an annulment, a request that would spark one of history's greatest religious schisms. The Vatican archives contain Henry's original annulment request, along with correspondence between the king, his representatives, and papal officials. These documents reveal a fascinating power struggle. Henry initially appealed on theological grounds, citing biblical passages from Leviticus. But behind closed doors, as revealed in archived letters, threats were made. Henry's representatives warned that if the Pope refused, England might break with Rome entirely. Perhaps most intriguing are the records showing Pope Clement VII's internal deliberations. Caught between Henry's demands and pressure from Emperor Charles V, Catherine's nephew, the Pope delayed his decision for 6 years. Was this merely diplomatic caution, or evidence of the Church prioritizing political alliances over theological principles? By 1533, Henry took matters into his own hands. He secretly married Anne Boleyn and appointed Thomas Cranmer as Archbishop of Canterbury, who promptly granted the annulment. The Pope then excommunicated Henry, and England's break with Rome was complete. Henry declared himself supreme head of the Church of England in 1534. This seismic religious shift, still felt today, originated from a matrimonial dispute documented in detail within the Vatican's walls. The archives also contain reports from papal envoys describing Henry's subsequent dissolution of monasteries and seizure of church lands, events that transformed England's religious, social and economic landscape. But do these documents tell the whole story? What private communications between the Pope and his advisors remain sealed from public view? Few historical figures embody the clash between scientific progress and religious authority like Galileo Galilei. In 1633 AD, this brilliant astronomer stood trial before the Roman Inquisition. He was accused of heresy for supporting the Copernicus's heliocentric model of the universe, the radical notion that Earth revolves around the Sun, not vice versa. The Vatican archives house the complete records of Galileo's heresy trial, including interrogation transcripts, scientific arguments, and his eventual recantation. The documents reveal a more nuanced picture than commonly portrayed. Contrary to popular belief, Galileo's main offense wasn't advancing heliocentrism itself, but his alleged defiance of papal authority by publishing dialogues that seemed to mock Pope Urban VIII, once Galileo's supporter and friend. Perhaps most fascinating is what the archives reveal about internal divisions within the Church. Not all Church officials opposed Galileo's ideas. Some Jesuit astronomers had independently verified his observations. The trial documents show how political considerations, personal rivalries, and genuine theological concerns all influenced the proceedings. The archives also contain records from 1992, when Pope John Paul II formally acknowledged the Church's error in condemning Galileo, a 359-year delay in vindication. But questions remain. Why did the Vatican wait until 1822 to remove Galileo's works from the Index of Forbidden Books? What other scientific works were suppressed during this period? And what does this episode reveal about the ongoing relationship between the Church leadership and scientific inquiry? In 1922, as the papal conclave prepared to elect a new pope after the death of Benedict XV, a startling discovery shook the Vatican. The treasury was completely empty. No coins, no banknotes, nothing. The financial crisis was so severe that the Vatican's Secretary of State sent encrypted telegrams to Washington, pleading for emergency funds. American Catholics rallied, raising exactly $210,400.09 to rescue the conclave, just in time to elect Pope Pius X. This dramatic bailout not only saved the day, but also forged a lasting financial bond between American Catholics and the Vatican. Yet it begs the question, how often has money, rather than divine inspiration, steered the Church's pivotal moments? Between 1932 and 1933, as millions of Ukrainians perished in a man-made famine engineered by Stalin's Soviet regime, Vatican diplomats sent detailed reports to Rome documenting the unfolding catastrophe. These reports, housed in the secret archives and partially released in recent years, raise profound questions about the Church knowledge and action during one of history's darkest chapters. Correspondence between Vatican officials reveals that Pope Pius XI received first-hand accounts of the famine from Catholic clergy in Ukraine. These harrowing reports describe people reduced to eating grass, bark, and even cases of cannibalism. Yet the Vatican, despite this knowledge, made no public denunciation of Stalin's policies at the time. The archives reveal a complex calculus of diplomatic considerations. Internal memos show Vatican officials feared that public condemnation would worsen conditions for Catholics living under Soviet rule. Other documents suggest unsuccessful behind-the-scenes efforts to channel aid to the region. But was diplomatic caution justified in the face of mass starvation? What moral obligations exist for institutions with global influence when confronted with evidence of atrocities? Perhaps most troubling are documents showing that while some Western journalists and governments downplayed or denied the famine, the Vatican possessed verified accounts of its severity. This raises uncomfortable questions about selective truth-telling and moral compromise during periods of geopolitical tension. How many lives might have been saved had powerful institutions spoken out more forcefully? And what other historical atrocities might be documented in still classified Vatican records? Few subjects in modern history generate more controversy than the Vatican's actions during World War II. In 2020, Pope Francis opened the wartime archives of Pope Pius XII, who served from 1939 to 1958, records that historians had sought for decades to evaluate the Church's response to Nazism and the Holocaust. The newly accessible documents paint a complex picture. They include Pius XII's diplomatic correspondence with world leaders, internal discussions about Nazi persecution of Jews, and reports from nuncios or papal ambassadors across Europe. Some records reveal humanitarian efforts. The Pope directed Vatican resources to hide thousands of Jews in Catholic institutions throughout Rome and elsewhere. Yet other documents raise difficult questions. Memos show that Pius received detailed information about death camps as early as 1942, including an eyewitness report from a Ukrainian Catholic archbishop describing mass killings in extraordinary detail. Despite this knowledge, the Pope never issued an explicit public condemnation of Nazi atrocities against Jews, thus choosing instead diplomatic channels and carefully worded statements deploring suffering in general terms. The archives also contain fascinating records of secret negotiations. In 1943, as German forces occupied Rome, US President Roosevelt's personal representative approached the Vatican about serving as an intermediary for peace talks with Germany, a plan that ultimately failed but demonstrates the Vatican's unique diplomatic position during the conflict. Perhaps most controversial are documents showing that after the war, certain Vatican officials helped facilitate the escape of Nazi war criminals to South America through what became known as the rat lines. Internal correspondence reveals debates about whether assisting these fugitives served humanitarian purposes or political objectives in the emerging Cold War. What principles guided these decisions? And how should we judge actions taken during history's most desperate hours? As we conclude our exploration of only some of the most controversial documents within the Vatican archives, we're left with more questions than answers. The tension between transparency and secrecy, between established history and hidden truth, continues to define this remarkable institution. Despite the fact that we've covered everything from the Knights Templar, the creation of the Church of England, the trials of Galileo, the Vatican's silence amidst atrocities committed in World War II, we've barely scratched the surface of these topics and others contained in the vast library of the Secret Vatican Archives. We'd love to hear from you, our Mysteries Decoders community, about which topics interest you most so we can create full episodes exploring these topics further. Please let us know in the comments section below. In part 3, we step boldly into the realm of the extraordinary, unraveling the most enigmatic treasures of the Vatican archives. Documents that whisper of paranormal phenomena and divine encounters, where the veil between heaven and earth grows tantalizingly thin. Join us as we continue our journey through one of history's most enigmatic repositories of knowledge. If you enjoyed decoding these fascinating documents, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Mysteries Decoders. Our community of inquisitive minds is only growing, and your voice is vital. Spread the word, share this video with your friends, your skeptical colleagues, and family members. Who knows what we'll decode next? Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and stay tuned to Mysteries Decoders.